This is an instructional video for the use, care, setup, and safety of the KitchenAid mixer that is found in your rolling table. The motor itself is underneath the drawer in which we keep our knives and right next to the bus tub of all the dry ingredients. When you go to pull this thing out, you should make sure you see on the side that this is to the front, is locked, because if it's unlocked and you go to lift it out, it's going to be very awkward. This thing has a bit of weight to it, so be careful as you lift it out, put it up on the table. All right, so look, the bottom's not falling. Underneath this table as well, stay down here for a second, you guys will see that we have attachments and bowls. All right, this is a dough hook. We can get into a flat beater. This is missing the whisk attachment. Maybe go down to the pit and see. Underneath the second bowl, we have all three attachments, okay? So tend to keep those underneath so that they don't fill up with dust. All right, let's take this up to the table and see what we're looking at. Okay, we're gonna be looking at this motor now, and when we go to set this up, cord often is wrapped around the base. Okay, the bottom of this is not sharp like would cut your hand, but you wanna make sure that you don't set the base down on that cord, maybe nick it and expose the wire. Before we plug this in, let's make sure that this thing is going to accept a bowl that is well seated and locked in. All right, so on the side, lift this up so this can go. There's a base that the bowl goes into. All right, so we have three different styles of bowls. There's this bowl with a handle, so 4.5 quart capacity. There's this bowl that has a rounded handle. It's a 5 quart capacity. It still fits in the base, a little bit bigger. And then from older years, there is a bowl that has no handle. These work as well, but because it doesn't have a handle, it's a little bit more difficult to put on. All right, zooming out to a wider view, we'll actually talk about how the bowl's set in this base. It's going to be a righty-tighty. There's threads on this, so if I set this down and twist, it should lock in. And I'm trying to twist, and it doesn't want to go any further to the right. We want to make sure that the bowl is well seated before we mess with it. This is the non-handle bowl. Get that nice and locked in. Sometimes when this gets so locked in, to remove it, kind of have to put my thumbs here, fingers on the side, and get it to go lefty-loosey. This is the 5 quart bowl. Get this in. Now, the pro tip is get yourself in position so that this handle does not get up against this base where it gets kind of wedged in there. Now, to make sure that we all know what an improper bowl looks and behaves like, we have this bowl has a red pipe cleaner on it. Make sure I don't use it. It's stripped. The bottom of this stripped out. So what I mean by that is when I put it in and go to tighten it, it just keeps spinning. Okay, that is bad news when this motor gets going. So if you ever go to put a bowl in and it doesn't lock in place the way that this is, we should not be using that bowl. You bring it to my attention. Once in a while it's possible that this base has kind of gotten stripped out, but more likely it's the bowl itself. All right, so let's make sure we have a bowl that's locked in. All right, now let's talk about this part here is the part that's going to be spinning this way. There's an extension here, a shaft. This one has a spring. Some don't have a spring on it. Either way is okay. But on the shaft itself, there's also a nub here that we want to be aware of because when we go to our attachments, they go on a certain way. So this is the dough hook used for making bread dough. And you can see there's a little notch there, okay, round and then the notch. So when we go to push this up, we have to push it up and then turn it this way. So that is clockwise to the right, okay? Now it's in place. All right, when it's time to turn it on, you can go ahead and make sure it's off on the other side, plug it in. I'll flip that around, okay, then I would lock this in, I can turn it on, it's gonna spin. Now this is stir 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Pretty powerful stuff. Anytime you have something in here that you want to scrape down, so you're making some thicker dough, if you have a rubber spatula, you turn it off all the way before you scrape that down. because I do not want this getting stuck inside this motor, okay, and doing damage to the motor itself. All right, let's get a different attachment together. Take this off this way. We have our most common attachment for making other types of doughs is the flat beater attachment. Again, there's the notch right there. You push this up, turn to the right, it's locked in place, set this down, lock it in, turn it on. All right, unlock to take this off. And this is done sometimes, you can set it on the counter, standing up, right, so it doesn't make a mess. We have our whip attachment here, okay, that has thin wires. This is only used for whipping cream into whipped cream, whipping up egg whites into meringue, and that is all. So this is not an attachment used very often, but has specific purposes. The thin wires, if you use it for the wrong type of material, could snap off and break. And that would be bad news. So this, again, matching up the notch, push it in, turn to the side, it's in place, close it up, you turn it on. That's an 8, that's a 10. All right, so that's our whip attachment. Other features on this that we don't have too many attachments for is this is a cover that has a gear drive. Okay, so if this thing gets loose, this may fall off. So watch out for that. Another thing to be aware of is on the side of this, there's a pin here that lets this head come off so you can access the wiring and all. Sometimes it gets, I'm gonna try to get it loose on purpose. Sometimes it starts sliding out. Should unplug that before we mess with it, right? Sometimes it starts sliding out, moving around. So just make sure you're aware of that. Push it back in before you mess with it. And then as I take this bowl out, one thing of care is we got to make sure that we're keeping this part up here clean. Okay, there's a motor up there, so we don't want to be putting a bunch of water in that area, but we don't want any gunky food up there that's falling off into our bowl down below. This base down here, okay, is also something that we need to keep clean out with the silver scrubber and all, just so there's no food gunk buildup. All right, last thing on safety for this is that we talked about the importance of this bowl being seated in here. Well, a bowl sometimes starts stripped, sometimes it strips just over use, and it could happen in the middle of your production, okay, using it. So if you ever had some attachment on and you didn't double check that this bowl was locked in place, you put it on loose, okay, or you happen to have it strip out and this bowl started spinning around or something, you need to fight the instinct to grab that bowl to make it steady, okay? And I don't want to do it to mess up the machine, but if the thing started wobbling around on the table, just always know where your off is, okay, to cut the power as opposed to trying to grab the bowl to steady it. So hopefully that is not something that ever happens in the middle of production. All right, okay. Now it would be time to put this away when we're done. Okay, you lock it in place so it doesn't lift up on you as you move it. Put the cord around to make sure it's not going to get underneath and get crushed or anything like that, and it can go back down beneath in the storage space that we showed you.